Ousmane Dembele's future at Paris Saint-Germain has gone from comfortable to complicated in the space of one Champions League night, one injury, 26 minutes on the pitch, and suddenly all the old questions about his body, his reliability, and now even his long-term future in Paris are right back on the table. We're talking about a Ballon d'Or winner who was supposed to be one of the pillars of this PSG project, a player who arrived in Paris to rebuild his reputation after those chaotic stop-start years at Barcelona and finally show what he can do over a full season at the very top level. Instead, here we are again, dissecting another setback on the biggest stage and asking what it means for the rest of his time at the club. This all kicked off in the first leg of PSG's Champions League knockout tie against AS Monaco. In a game of this magnitude, you want your stars on the pitch, setting the tone. Instead, Dembele's night barely got started. According to transfer reporter Fabrizio Romano, he lasted just 26 minutes before having to be taken off with what was clearly some kind of physical problem. You could see the frustration straight away from him, from the bench, from the fans. At that point, PSG were already in a tricky spot, trailing in the match. For a moment, it felt like one of those nights where everything goes wrong at once. A deficit on the scoreboard, one of your main attacking threats limping off, and a hostile Champions League atmosphere to deal with. But to their credit, Luis Enrique's side didn't collapse. The response from the rest of the team actually showed why the club has invested so heavily in attacking depth. Desire Dewey came on and made an immediate impact, finding the net not long after his introduction and flipping the momentum. Before halftime, Akraf Hakimi added another, and suddenly a night that looked like it could spiral into disaster was 2-2 and very much alive from PSG's point of view. The comeback changed the mood of the game, but it did not erase what happened with Dembele. Once the adrenaline from the goals wears off, you're left with the same nagging question. How serious is this injury? And how long will he be out this time? And that's where the concern really lies, because this isn't a one-off. Dembele's injury history has shadowed his entire career. For all of his talent, for all the highlight reel dribbles and match-winning moments, his durability has always been the biggest asterisk next to his name. The numbers tell you exactly why this latest issue is being treated so seriously. Over the course of his professional career, Dembele has already missed 162 matches. That is an enormous amount of football to sit out for any player, let alone one who's meant to be a central figure in every team he joins. And this season alone, 2025-26, he has already lost 73 days to 4 separate problems. Between muscle injuries and illness, he's been unavailable for 11 matches before this latest setback even happened. Those figures are not normal for a player at this level. A coach needs to be able to trust that his stars can be there not just for the big nights, but week in, week out, building chemistry and rhythm. With Dembele, the pattern has been the same across clubs. When he's fit, he looks like one of the most dangerous wide players on the planet. But there's always a lingering fear that something might go wrong at any moment. PSG, to their credit, have tried to protect themselves against exactly this scenario by stockpiling attacking talent. Luis Enrique is not sure of options when Dembele is unavailable. There's Bradley Barcola, still developing but already showing promise. There's Kvaratskhelia, a player with his own star power and ability to change games from the wing. There's a young and fearless Dewey, who just proved against Monaco that he can come in cold and deliver. Then you have Ibrahim Bey and Goncalo Ramos, more pieces who can be moved around, keep the front line firing. Against Monaco, that depth did exactly what it was supposed to do. Stepped in, steadied the ship, and helped salvage the result. In the short term, that takes some of the sting out of Dembele coming off injured yet again. But everyone inside that dressing room knows that his unique profile is hard to replace. There are not many players in world football who can stretch a defense, beat multiple men off the dribble, and create chances out of nothing the way he can when he's right physically. So PSG now find themselves trying to balance 2 timelines at once. The first is immediate: medical scans, recovery schedules, and figuring out whether he can play any meaningful role in the rest of this Champions League campaign. The second is far bigger. How do you plan for the future when one of your supposed cornerstones has such an unpredictable fitness record? That's where the outside noise from abroad comes in, and it's getting louder. According to reporting from Sky Sports, Influential figures within the Saudi Pro League have already started exploring the idea of bringing Dembele to the Middle East in 2026. These aren't formal negotiations yet, but they are described as serious early inquiries, part of a broader shift in strategy as the league looks to keep attracting global superstars in a more targeted way. We've already seen the Saudi Pro League spend heavily to lure big names out of Europe. That project is still evolving, and now they're reportedly turning their eyes toward a Ballon d'Or winner who, by 2026, will have experienced both the highest individual recognition and a long run of physical wear and tear. From the Saudi perspective, the logic is obvious. You get a player with worldwide recognition, highlight reel skills, and a built-in fan base. Even if his availability has been inconsistent in Europe, a slightly reduced match load and the financial package on offer could still make it a tempting proposition for both sides. For the league, it would be another statement that they can attract top-tier talent in its prime or close to it, not just at the very twilight of their careers. For PSG, however, this kind of interest adds another layer to an already complicated equation. On paper, they still have a Ballon d'Or level player under contract, someone they built part of this project around. But they also have to be realistic about his body and what the next few years might look like. Do you continue to structure your attack around Dembele, trusting that the worst physically is behind him and that he can give you 2 or 3 relatively stable seasons? Or do you quietly begin to plan for a future where he plays fewer minutes, where he's more a rotation piece, and where a potential move to the Saudi Pro League in 2026 could actually make sense for all parties? It's not a decision they have to make publicly right now, but it's naive to think those conversations aren't already being had behind closed doors. Big clubs like PSG are always thinking several windows ahead. Between his injury record and the external interest, Dembele is no longer just a player. He's a strategic question. From his point of view, there's also a very real choice looming. Stay in Europe. Keep fighting to be a central figure in a team chasing the Champions League, and try to finally put together a run of seasons that match his talent. Or, at some point down the line, listen seriously to offers from Saudi Arabia that would likely be financially life-changing, while lowering some of the physical and media pressure he faces in Paris. A move to the Saudi Pro League in 2026, as Sky Sports suggests is being explored, would come at a time when he's no longer a young prospect, but not yet at the traditional end of a career either. For some players, that kind of timing makes sense. You've already proved yourself in Europe, you've collected trophies and individual awards, and you decide to cash in while you can. For others, the Champions League and European spotlight are simply too hard to walk away from. As all of that swirls in the background, PSG staff have to stay locked in on the present. European competition is still very much alive. They fought back to 2-2 against Monaco in that first leg, which means everything is still on the line in the return fixture. Whether or not Dembele is available could change the entire complexion of how Luis Enrique sets his team up. Without him, there's more responsibility on players like Kvaratskhelia to carry the creative load. Barcola and Dewey may find themselves playing bigger minutes in high-pressure situations than they originally expected this season. Ramos and Bay might be asked to do more off the ball to open space for others, because one thing Dembele does when he's on the pitch is distort defensive shapes just by being such a constant 1v1 threat. In the knockout rounds of the Champions League, those fine margins matter. One player's availability, or lack of it, can tilt a tie. That's what makes this moment so sensitive for PSG. They're trying to finally break through and become consistent contenders for the European title, and they build a squad with that specific goal in mind. Every injury to a major figure chips away at their margin for error. At the same time, the speculation coming from Saudi Arabia isn't going to simply disappear. In fact, if his injury issues continue, it may even intensify. Clubs in that league know they can offer something few European sides can match financially. If Dembele feels underappreciated because of the constant doubt surrounding his fitness, or simply tired of the pressure that comes with playing in Paris, the idea of a fresh start in a completely different footballing environment might become more appealing. There is also a harsh business reality here. Players with significant injury histories do not always age gracefully in terms of market value. If PSG believe that by 2026, they may be facing a decision between losing him on a free down the line or accepting a substantial offer from abroad, That could influence how they handle his next contract and his role in the squad. But we're not there yet. Right now, the focus inside PSG will be on the medical department and the message they bring back to Luis Enrique. If scans show that this is a minor problem, something that keeps Dembele out for only a short spell, then the narrative shifts slightly. It becomes another warning sign, but not necessarily a crisis. If, however, the diagnosis is more serious, stretching his time on the sidelines into weeks or months, then the pressure really starts to mount. Either way, the pattern is becoming harder to ignore. For a player of his quality, the conversation around him is far too often about availability instead of ability. And in elite European football, availability can be just as important as talent when a club decides who to build around and who to eventually move on from. What this latest setback and the Saudi Pro League rumors really do is shine a bright light on Dembele's crossroads. On one side, a PSG team still loaded with ambition, competing deep in Europe, and capable of surrounding him with elite teammates and resources. On the other, a potential future in a league that is aggressively recruiting big names, offering enormous contracts, and building its own version of global football relevance. For now, PSG officially are focused on the here and now. Scans, treatment, recovery plans, and the next Champions League match. But make no mistake, every time Ousmane Dembele walks off early, and every time a report emerges linking him with a 2026 move abroad, the questions about his long-term place in Paris get a little bit louder. Whether this moment ends up being just another frustrating chapter in a career already full of them, or the beginning of a gradual shift toward a future outside of PSG, will depend on what happens over the next few months, both on the pitch and in those quiet conversations happening far away from the cameras. One thing is certain. After this latest Champions League night, the spotlight on Ousmane Dembele isn't going anywhere. It has simply moved from his brilliant left foot to something far more uncertain. His body, his next contract, and the direction he chooses for the closing stretch of an already eventful career.